So I finished Side Order recently, and as the main single-player expansion path everyone was waiting for, there's a lot of comparisons to Octo Expansion and questions on if it's worth the $25 price tag. Today, I'm here to give my full review. I'll keep spoilers to a dedicated section, so don't worry about that, and I'm mostly going to focus on spoiler-free talk, so those unsure if they should try it can hopefully get a better picture. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy, and watch to the end to see my review score. First off, it's worth noting that Side Order is a bit different from the other story modes. This is a roguelite format. What this means is that you start out very weak and nerfed compared to standard main weapons for whatever you pick. Then, as you climb the tower one floor at a time, you power up with chips that you earn from every level, slowly becoming insanely broken in whatever path you want. However, if you end up losing all of your lives, your progress is reset. There are hacks which are toggleable upgrades you can get from pearls, a currency you get from runs, regardless of if you fail or succeed. I'll get into those later. Side Order is made to be replayed with different weapon loadouts and take multiple tries. Defeating on the first try is extremely difficult, so it's okay to fail and get stronger that way. The tower itself takes about 1 to 2 hours to climb for a full attempt, which I think is perfect. It's long enough so that runs don't feel too short, while not feeling like a slog to replay afterwards. The world itself is something I only want to touch on briefly, but it has this digital and colorless aesthetic that I think everything uses very well. Splatoon has always done a good job with its visuals and music matching the world, and here is no different. Everything fits the vibe just perfectly. Next up, upgrades. These are the most important things to get right in a roguelite in my opinion, and I think Side Order does a mostly pretty good job with it. A lot of the chips you unlock during your runs have a bit of safe upgrades, stuff like fire rate, hitbox size, and damage, just for a few examples. Most chips are these simple stat buffs. While they work fine and do add up over time, they just don't really do anything too exceptional. My personal favorite perks are the more creative ones though. Things like having your squid rolls be able to do an attack, dodge rolls being able to be an attack, or many of the pearl drone upgrades, which in particular feel a lot more unique. Without spoiling too much of them though, there are still a lot of cool synergy combos that allow you to make different experiences, as well as some weapon class exclusive ones that if you play a lot of the weapon class, you will have a lot of fun with. However, some weapons suffer from more limited upgrades that I don't think allow you to expand on what they can do as well. I don't think it's a huge issue though. Hacks, on the other hand, feel a lot more varied. There's what you would expect, like having more lives, the ability to take more damage and deal more damage, but also a lot more creative ones. Once again, the Pearl Drum really gets to shine with some of its upgrade path options and different ways to charge those up. But it's stuff like the mid-air jump when armor is broken that I think are a bit more cool. I think hacks are pretty standard and work fine for a difficulty adjustment. There is also an option to remove all hacks to do a challenge run, which comes with its own set of optional rewards, which is cool. I think they did a great job with this. On to the weapon variety. Every weapon class has its own palette, basically the thing you put all your chips into, for a total of 11, same as the 11 classes in the game. Like I said before, all of them start very weak but upgrade over time, some having unique upgrades or different preferences for the style of chips you can get. While all of them come with a set sub and special based off the character they're based on, for once, you're actually allowed some level of customization with chances to replace them, and this feels so nice. This is basically the first time you can experiment with different weapon kit combinations, and it's really cool to finally be able to try out more stuff than just what the devs picked for you. It's a level of creativity and freedom that Splatoon has really needed, and I hope this is a sign for future games to come. As for the sub and special balance, I think they're mostly fine. The specials especially all feel powerful in their own ways. They're not all equal for sure, there's definitely some better than others, but I think they did a good job of making them all feel useful in their own ways. Subs are mostly there, but there are definitely more options that feel weaker and just seem to be there for some variety, like Splash Wall, for instance.
I don't know if I'll use the Splash Wall, to be honest. I don't know what situation I'm going to need to use it, but when that situation shows itself, I'll do it.
Some upgrades can influence and make them better, even the weaker ones, and if you have an option you don't like I said, you can change it, so it helps get rid of that issue. The enemies and bosses are a bit limited in quantity. For what we have though, it's a solid variety in terms of what the enemies themselves actually do. There are many different kinds of enemies that all have unique approaches to dealing with you, and even have unique synergy with how they can set up each other's attacks or work well with each other when there's a lot of them on screen. However, there's still not a whole lot of them. I think on your first few playthroughs, it's not that much of an issue, but if you're going for 100% and trying to beat every weapon, it is. And as a roguelike game, this does matter. It's made to be super replayable. While I won't spoil any specific boss, the ones we have are pretty good, with the exception of one that's kind of a glorified chase sequence. However, once again, there isn't much here, which I think is even worse than the enemies in this case, because you do fight the bosses a decent amount, and it gets really repetitive. Luckily, most of them are really fun and stand out from each other in terms of how you actually fight them. The levels themselves are also fine. Some of the layouts repeat for different objectives and have unique challenge conditions on the harder difficulties that you can choose to go for, or some conditions that you may be forced into. Again, don't want to spoil any of them. The modes are pretty interesting. The 8-ball was completely reworked and I think fits pretty well since it can't fall off the map now and is more based on using it to knock around enemies. It's different, but it works. And there's other things like zones and defeating portals. However, compared to Octo Expansion, there's a lot less variety in the levels and objectives to shake up the pace that it would have benefited from. A lot of these objectives still fall into shoot all the enemies and then shoot this objective thing on the map. Having a change up in terms of the amount of time you have to do and different objectives and conditions could have been done a lot better. And outside of the harder difficulties, I think it does get a little bit more repetitive faster than I would have liked. So all I can say about the characters before getting to the spoilers section is I think for the most part there's a lot of missed potential and things they could do better. I'd go as far as to say it's the weakest aspect of the whole thing. But if I want to go into any more detail, I gotta talk about spoilers. There will be spoilers for the next few sections. We're gonna talk about all the spoiler stuff. If you don't want to see it, skip to this timestamp. 3, 2, 1, bye. There is one character dynamic that is pretty blatant right from the start, which is Pearl and Marina's relationship. Now yes, I know they didn't officially confirm it, but I mean, come on. It's like the devs played a game called How Close Can We Get to Confirming Pearlina without officially confirming it, and they won the goddamn game! There are so many hints everywhere. They literally spend like 99% of the time in that damn elevator just flirting with each other. Some people might say that this relationship being shown off is fan service since it's a popular ship back in Splatoon 2, but I think that misses the point. The reason it's such a popular ship is because Splatoon 2 did hint at and build up that relationship multiple times. We learned their story in Octo Expansion and a little bit through the Splatfest news, so it makes sense that 4 years later they'd be pretty damn official at this point. It does a good job of expanding the dynamic they built up, and it feels pretty earned for those who were invested in it, which is something I think we needed. It's good to see the characters actually evolve over time. So Oct, or Deadfish, was fine for me. It was good to see more of their past and friendship with Marina, and the post-game rewards give you 3 logs from them, including seeing them unsanitized, which is a really cool reward. You also get a bit of stuff from the elevator dialogue and them collabing with Off the Hook at some points. I think more could have been done, but I can see why people like them, and I'm definitely more a fan of the character now. That being said, the bag was fumbled on Agent 4, 8, and this Order character thing. 4, I get it, they were never confirmed to be in it. We did kind of jump the gun on that one. But they do get mentioned, and outside of Agent 8, they're the only agent to have a palette here. We don't see any for Captain 3 or Neo 3. It's also your Splatoon 2 Inkling that shows up during Parallel Canon. You know, the one you set as Agent 4. They also just are a Splatoon 2 character, and are the only major one that's absent in this that isn't dead, or Little Judd, who is probably a plotline for another time. It would have been really cool to give them something more, but they basically just got scraps. Agent 8 got some stuff from the dev diaries in terms of working with Off the Hook, which is cool, but no other dynamic was explored and no further memory unraveling, even though they say we've lost it again. In Octo Expansion, each memcake told you a bit more about who Agent 8 was, but now we're back to them just essentially being a player insert, which feels very repetitive by this point. As for Order, it feels like the devs are in the situation of, well, we don't want to revive Tartar because we kind of ended that off pretty well. But we also don't want Marina to be the bad guy because, you know, we kind of already did that thing with Callie before and it was kind of predictable, so, I like the idea of the memverse, and the dev diaries are a cool way to expand on a lot of the lore that we got, and especially tie Kamaboko and Octo Expansion as a way into bringing those characters and storyline to a close. For example, so Padre in the Splatoon 2 square, which is awesome to see. But Order itself has bland motivations with very little to say or represent. We also never solved the Octolings issue of being afraid of change and moving to the surface that was touched on. It just kind of gets dropped. If you replay the story mode to 100% on every weapon, you do get a lot more information information, but if you're doing the average playthrough, the story really doesn't work. Tartar did, on the other hand. In Octo Expansion, he was connected to the professor from the other stories, but you also had a lot of interactions with him as a phone that gave away what he was doing, let alone the giant blender you're building. And then even after that in the final phases, you can tell what this statue is if you're paying attention to the phase names, and you even get a bit more dialogue. On the other hand, I could really never care about order at all. I think the boss fight is great, on the other hand. It's the first non-secret boss that I felt has actually been hard since Splatoon 1 Octavio, and if you're low hacks, it's definitely a step up from even that. The attacks he has just felt really cool. Bringing back Stingray to be a villain weapon just fits the fate of that special so well. It almost feels like a joke to anyone who knows about Stingray's history in Splatoon 2. Reef Slider and Super Chumps also being actually threatening and strong here was honestly really funny, though it does make their multiplayer versions look a lot worse than they already are. The tentacle attack he has is kind of jank, and the final phase is fine. Being able to get literally all the chips is kind of cool. There wasn't as much build up to it compared to Alterna and Octo Expansion, but I mean, I understand how they didn't want to repeat the phases thing. They could have done more, but I enjoyed what we got. Post-game, the weapon replicas are cool. The kits are sadly the same, but the simplistic design is actually kind of neat for the theming, and especially Stamper is really funny since it doesn't have an animation for revving up. It just looks kind of silly. The unique sound effects they have, though, are really neat, and I thought Order and Chaos skins could have been a really cool theme for third kits, but oh well. You also, of course, get Octo Shot, and the idea of hacks limiting your palette on that weapon is a really neat final challenge I honestly enjoyed. Is it better than After Alterna or Inner Agent 3? Nah. There's a lot of gear though, bonus lore, banners, stickers, and music as well. Definitely way more of a reward than Octo Expansion had. Free the Octo weapons, it isn't too late, Nintendo, please! Octobrella for the Sorella skin would go crazy. And we need to know what the Octo Brush would be called. Alright, welcome back, non-spoiler viewers. I'm gonna give my score first, but please keep watching afterward. I promise I have more to say that I think is the most important thing I have to say in the video. Octo Expansion has been a 9.5 out of 10 for me for years, and it hasn't changed no matter how many times I've revisited it. After my complete playthrough of Side Order, I would say that it comfortably sits at an 8 out of 10. While I think the overall campaign is strong, it's mainly flawed by its character work, limited enemy design, and repetitive objectives that hurt it, especially on replays. I think when going for 100%, if you're not a mega fan of Splatoon or roguelikes, it can feel like a bit of a slog. But for 99% of people, I think there's plenty of stuff for a fun set of playthroughs, and for $25, it feels pretty worth it for your money. Did it top Octo Expansion? No. But I think this comparison that a lot of people have, including the title of this video, is a little bit unfair after thinking about it. Octo Expansion was building off the hero mode story format. It was a huge evolution for it at a time where Splatoon 2's hero mode was repetitive and lacked serious innovation, especially in level design that had to do work for 9 very different weapons. Octo Expansion had 2 similar story modes to learn from and evolve from, which is part of why it's as refined and polished as it is. Alterna was even based off that with some extra stuff like skill trees, the hub world, and a bit more path freedom. Even if it doesn't pass Octo Expansion in my opinion, Alterna was a pretty interesting addition. But now, hero mode is over. They said that in the Splatoon 3 Direct that they wrapped it up, and Splatoon has gotten to a point where new modes and experiences are important. Side Order is a step into a new genre for Splatoon, being roguelikes, which while they share some similarities with what we've had before, are a much more different experience that I think many non-hardcore Splatoon fans were asking for before Splatoon 3 released. In fact, I think it would have been a perfect hook for those players if it happened a bit less than a year and a half after launch. If Alterna expanded off of Octo Expansion, I'm more than willing to bet Splatoon 4 might expand on the roguelike concept for its single-player mode in that case. Side Order may help shape into something even more amazing than it is right now, so it has a lot more importance than its number score, and I really hope we can see this new style evolve as the series goes on. Side Order was a blast to play, and a much needed new experience for the Splatoon series, proving it still has so much to grow. I think it's worth playing.